Pick it, David.
I love that tune. Cousin Sally Brown.
Used to hear my cousin Willard pick that, David.
That's a great old Watauga County tune. You were born here in Watauga County in 1923.
Yeah, according to Mama, at 9 o'clock on Tuesday evening.
What day?
The 3rd of March.
You were the 6th of 9 children. What was that like?
Well, I got out and played just like the rest of the boys in spite of the handicap and fell out of trees and got hurt, just like the rest of them, and helped Dad saw wood when I got big enough and all that good stuff, you know.
What kind of games did you play as a little kid?
We used to play tag, and we played one called hide and seek, you know, or whoop-eyed, we called it.
Yeah.
Get way off somewhere and holler, and they'd try their best to find you. And I was pretty good at hiding, even if I couldn't see.
And now your cousin Willard told me sometimes you'd be coming up the road, and he'd see you way down the road, a dirt road, of course, and he'd get out right in front of you, and you'd just stop right before him and say, "Somebody's there."
Oh, they've tried that many times, and if they forgot and were trying to hide, they'll breathe a little harder than they normally would. And the breath comes through the voice box, and I could hear good enough that, "Hello there, Herb," or "How you, Willard?" And they could not believe it.
Wasn't your dad the one that said that you had ears like a cat?
Yes, it was. He said, "Son, you can hear like a cat."
You told me one time you had radar you could sort of develop.
Well, you know, a bat uses a radar system that can hear much higher than any human can, but I didn't know at that time when I began to do that when I was a little boy, like on a still day, you could walk by just maybe 4 or 5 weeds in a patch that stood up past the little boy's shoulder, and I could hear the grass rustle echo off of that, things like that. If I was in 4 or 5 feet of it, I could tell where it was.
How did you lose your sight?
When I was born, some kind of an infection got in my eyes and destroyed the corneas. It was thought that contaminated silver nitrate drops did it. I don't know. I can't remember seeing, David. By the time I was a year old, I was blind. I can vaguely remember when I could kind of tell that I had light perception for a long time. I still have a little. I could vaguely tell that the moon was round. I can remember that. And I could see that I could point out the bright stars.
You told me one time that one of the best things your father ever did was put you on the opposite end of a crosscut saw.
Well, it taught me that I didn't have to sit in the corner as a handicapped person, that I could work. And after about a week of that, my muscles got used to it. I was as proud as I could be. I was 14 that year.
What was your dad like?
Well, he was just an old, hard-working mountain man. When he wasn't working on the little dirt farm we had there, as it's been referred to sometimes, he did a lot of public works, like he did everything from helped build a lot of the buildings when ASU was growing here as a college, putting down floor and all kinds of things like that. And then he helped work on the highway during the WPA days when times were really hard. They worked sometimes, in the beginning of that, they worked for 80 cents a day, 10 cents an hour.
Wow. So he just kind of did any kind of work where he could make some cash.
Exactly. A hard-working man. Dad was a harmonica player, and he played quite a few of the old breakdowns, and he was a singing leader in the church. And when he got me my first little harmonica, was at Christmas time one year, I believe, and he was going to show me how to play something on it.
How old were you?
I must have been 5 or 6, something like that, just before we got that wind-up Victrola.
Mm-hmm. So your dad gave you that harmonica on there?
Yeah, it was a C, too, and he said, "Now, son, this thing got notes on it, just like the ones you hear me sing in the songbook, like do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do." And then he played the scale, sort of. And I said, now some of them you push and some of them you pull, and then laughed. Said, you learn to play a tune like Home Sweet Home, single note first. And then he said, once you get to where you can find the notes on there pretty good, then you can start noting it with your tongue like I do. He said it'll sound like this when you first learn how to play it single note. And then when you learn to note it with your tongue, it sounds like this.
Play another old straight harp tune that he might have played.
I'll play you Sally Gooden. How's that?
That's great harp playing, Doc. Was your dad that good?
Well, just about.
Wow. Huh. Did you ever play with other people on the harmonica?
I don't remember. I don't think Dad ever played with anybody. Just played some around the house.
And did you ever play with any other musicians?
Oh yeah, a little later on I did. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think I played the harmonica some with my cousin Spencer Miller. Played the banjo as well as the harp, and I played the harp a little bit with him.
Mm-hmm. Of course, now that's what we call the straight harp. And then later on, I guess it was later on, you learned the blues harp. How did you learn that?
From Spencer. And I first learned it as a breakdown, believe it or not as a blues.
How do you think he learned it up here in the mountains?
Listening to the records and figured it out, I guess. By the time I was big enough to really begin to listen to the harmonica, everybody had a little wound-up Victrola in the house just about that could afford it at all, you know, and
Right.
his folks had one. They loved the blues as good as we did. Oh, swing low, sweet chariot.
That's a good one.
That's about as bluesy as you can get to be a spiritual.
That's true. What was your mom's name?
Annie Watson, Nancy Ann, and some of her brothers called her Nanny, but Dad called her Annie all the time.
She must have been really busy keeping up with 9 children.
Too busy to learn to play the guitar, she sang a few of the good old-time ballads and things like that, and some of the good old hymns around the house, but she had her hands full, I can tell you.
Did you help her with the younger kids?
I've rocked a many a baby to sleep. My 2 youngest sisters, I reckon I did my share in that.
When you were growing up here, what was it like in the mountains in those days? Of course, Boone is built up now, but in those days it must have been quite rural.
It certainly was. One of the wonderful things I remember, besides enjoying walking the good country roads, I really enjoyed that even in the hot weather or the cold, was the good fresh air that's not quite like it was then. And certain little plants and things that are almost extinct, when everything would begin to come out in the summer, it was wonderful. You walk along the roads and you just enjoyed being alive. I still do that out in the countryside, but I miss some of it now. I wouldn't dare try to walk to Boone now.
No, that would be tough.
Too much traffic.
So you can tell the difference in the air?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
How about the number of birds?
Oh, lots of the birds are extinct. The old-fashioned mockingbird, there used to be hundreds of them around these mountains when I was still going to school over at Raleigh in the 30s. I hadn't heard one in years. I don't. And the whippoorwill, I never hear those anymore.
Were you a mischievous kid?
I remember once I got a pretty good spanking, not a real dangerous one, for scratching a record real bad on the Victrola before I got big enough to play it myself. And I learned better until I got older, and they showed me how to do it and let me try it. I was about 6, I guess, when I reached up and pulled the needle right across the record. Yeah, womp. I remember that yet, clear as yesterday.
Tell us about how that Victrola came into your house.
Well, my two oldest brothers and my dad were working for my uncle, one of Mama's brothers, who owned a sawmill at the time, and Uncle Jerome had bought him a big old floor model Victrola, and he had a small one that he wanted to sell. He mentioned something to Dad about it, and Dad said, "I'd like to buy that thing. What do you take for it?" And he said, "Well, if you and the boys got time, you might push for money." He said, "If you want to work a week for him at the sawmill, you can have it. And there's 50 records that goes with it." And Dad said, "I believe we'll do that." And him and I think they worked 4 days. It wasn't a full week or something. And Dad come carrying it in. I thought we had the king's treasure.
I bet you did. What were some of the records that came with it?
Oh, there's a whole bunch. I'll name you one or two.
Yeah.
There's some. I'll just sprinkle through it and tell you the kinds we had. We had some blues recordings by people like John Hurt, Furry Lewis. We had a couple of Memphis Jug Band, Cannon's Jug Stompers, and then there was a Dixieland jazz record or two, one or two of the Skillet Lickers recordings, Clayton McMitchen and Gid Tanner, and then there was a few good old gospel records, Smith's Sacred Singers.
Whatever happened to those records?
We wore them out, every one of them. The last one, I found one in some old recordings I had, and it wasn't even worth keeping. It was so worn you couldn't even hear the words or half the music. I just got rid of it. I hated to part with it, but if it would have still played, I would have kept it.
Was that your main musical influence when you were a kid?
It had to have been. No, something came before that, David. The old-time gospel music that they sang at the church, unaccompanied, of course. My first memory of music as such, I was sitting on Mother's lap, I must have been about 2 or 3, was hearing them sing songs like There Is a Fountain and the old Lone Pilgrim, songs of that kind.
Singing in church, and I guess you sang them as well.
Yeah.
In fact, your dad was a singing teacher, wasn't he?
He was a singing leader at the church, and Rosalie's grandfather, T.S. Robbins, was the singing teacher. Dad was a singing leader at the church. And Mr. Robbins taught singing schools every year in August. He was pastor of the church at that time. When the crops was laid by, as they put it, in August, he always teach a 1-week singing school.
When did you guys get the first radio?
I came home from school in 1936, and next to my oldest brother, Otis, was still at home, and he had bought a little Crosley 4-tube radio, had enough batteries with that thing to run a sawmill. And man, I thought that was something, and it was pretty nice. And I began to hear Charlie and Bill Monroe on the radio. We'd already found 1 or 2 of their recordings at that time. What would you give in exchange, I think, and I forgot what was on the other side. And the radio began to add a bunch of notions to my love of music.
Now, where would one buy records in Boone back in the 1920s?
There was a place called the Green Inn, a little bed and breakfast place there in Boone. And in the basement, Mr. Richard Green had a little music store. He sold guitars and banjos, and he also sold records.
All kinds?
Yeah. You could get big band recordings there. You could get mostly country records. I think he kept mostly what sold the best. Mm-hmm. But he'd order stuff for you if you knew who the artist was and the name of the songs. He'd order recordings for you if you wanted him to.
I think it was interesting. You told me one time that you could buy blues records there.
Oh, that was one of the main things that he carried was good blues.
That's interesting that many mountain people would have been buying blues records.
It's amazing how many people here in these mountains loved blues at that time. You know, music is the thing that bridges the gap between cultures. I remember once on the road, I got to inject this into this. Merle and I were doing a festival somewhere, and I overheard Sonny Terry talking to Lightning Hopkins, and he said, "You ever hear Doc Watson and Merle Watson play?" He said, "Man, I don't care anything about that old hillbilly music." He said, "Just let me tell you, man, you just want to listen one time, and you will."
What a nice compliment.
And me and Merle played some pretty good, about 4 good blues tunes on that. And old Lightning was a friend.
He loved it after that.
It bridges the gap.
Well, now, as a little kid, were you banging around in pots and pans? Were you a musical child?
Anything that had a tone to it, I was apt to beat on it. Sometimes Mom would say, "Honey, get out on the porch for that. I've got a headache. You're bursting my head." I'd go on the porch and hammer and beat on something that made a good sound, I thought. They'd get me sometimes 2 little tin cans. One of them had a different tone. They'd be like bing, bong, bing, from one to the other. Or I loved the cowbell, especially where they had 2 or 3 around there and they'd have different tones.
So when the radio and records came in, you were primed to listen, ready to go.
Absolutely.
Who were some of your favorite radio stars? Besides Bill
man.
Monroe.
There was the Blue Sky Boys, Bill Monroe, J.E. Matter and the Mountaineers. Oh, man. Even Jack Shook and the Missouri Mountaineers on the Grand Ole Opry, the Possum Hunters, Dave Macon, just a whole slew of them. The Elmore Brothers. In '39, Merle Travis, I began to hear Merle.
Mm-hmm.
I had heard the Delmore Brothers play Deep River Blues, and I thought, Lord, I need to learn that song, but my guitar would not sound like both of theirs. When I began to hear old Travis play, I thought, now wait a minute. He's doing something with his thumb for that little rhythm vamp, like. And I listened, and I learned that part, but after about 10 years practice, I got to where I could do it something like... Let it rain, let it pour, let it rain a whole lot more, 'cause I got them deep river blues. Let that old river rise and fall, let the big waves make a wall, 'cause I got them deep river blues. My old gal, she's sweet little pal, she walks just like a waterfowl when I get them deep river blues. Ain't no one to cry for me, the fish all go out on a spree when I get them deep river blues. Give me back my old boat, I'm gonna sail, boys, if she'll float. Yes, I've got them deep river blues. Gonna run down to Muscle Shoals, times are getting better there, I'm told, boys, I got them deep river blues. Let it rain, let it pour, let it rain a whole lot more, 'cause I got them deep river blues. Let that rain drive right on, and let the big waves sweep along, 'cause I got them deep river blues.
When you were a kid listening to the Delmore Brothers do that, did you know that there were 2 guys playing both
Yeah,
of those?
yeah, I could tell by listening. I had a pretty good ear even then, though I couldn't play none of the stuff hardly that they played. I had a pretty good ear for the music, and I could tell that there was some kind of guitar other than the flat top.
Mm-hmm.
The tenor guitar was in there, and boy, when I found out really what they were doing, I thought, no wonder my guitar wasn't sounding like both of them.
When you were a little kid listening to that on the radio, did you ever imagine that you would be a popular entertainer?
When I first got my little old Stella guitar, I was just 13 or 14, you know, just a young'un. And boy, by that time, I wanted to make me a record, awful bad.
I'll be darned. Now, did you take those recordings, just play them over and over to learn them?
Yeah, but I learned a lot quicker then than I do now. I could hear it 2 or 3 times, and I can remember the melody and get out fool with on the harp till I got it down.
Would they let you play the record player?
Yeah, by that time.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, by the time I was getting to where I could play the harp, I was 12, 13 years old, 11 and 12.
Yeah, I see.
Yeah, getting to where I could really begin to play the harp pretty good, you know.
So that's why those records got completely worn out, I
That's
guess.
exactly. But they played them much as I did, remember?
Uh-huh. Everybody loved them.
Yeah.
Tell us about how you got the first banjo.
In 1934, Dad made me a little homemade banjo. Had a cat skin head on it. First, he put a groundhog skin head on it, and it was too thick. It didn't work good. He was splitting stove wood, and I was getting me a big armful to take in the house to put in the wood box for Mama. And my brother come up through the yard with something in a little sack and a big bucket of water in the other hand, and Dad said, "Lenny, what you got in that sack?" He said, "I got Granny's poor old cat that's got too old to live any longer, and she wanted me to put it out of its misery." And I told her I couldn't do it, and she said, "Son, I'll give you 50 cents if you will. I just ain't got the heart." It couldn't see and it couldn't eat, so Dad thought about it a minute, and he said, "I seen a Joe Rogers advertisement in Sears Roebuck for a banjo head. If you boys will skin that thing, I'll make you a banjo head out of it." Well, we both dreaded it, but Lenny said, "Well, I bet that would sound good. I bet that'd be as clear as you could read a paper through it when Dad gets done with it." And between Dad and Lenny, they got that thing right and all the hair off of it. It was just about clear. Oh man, it's had a beautiful sound too.
Did your dad play the banjo?
Yes, he did. And when he got it made, he began to tune it up. I said, "Papa, can you pick that thing?" He said, "Nah, a little bit." He said, "I believe I can play you a tune on it. Would you like to hear the first tune he picked for me?"
I would.
"It won't sound like the fretless now." He said, "Now I'm going to play Ruben's Train for you, and I'll show you how it blows somewhere down in the middle. And I can't do the fretless slide, but I'll show you what he did." Made a train, he set her on the track, they're running to the Lord knows where. Oh me, oh my, run her to the Lord knows where. I'm walking along these ties with the tears in my eyes, trying to read a letter from my home. Oh me, oh my, trying to read a letter from my home. If that train runs right, I'll see my woman tomorrow night. I'm 500 miles away from home. Train, set her on the track, run her to the Lord knows where. Oh me, oh my, run her to the Lord knows where.
Man, that's old-timey sounding. That's great. So that was the first one he played, and then how did you even know how to hold it and how to play it with your right hand?
He showed me.
Uh-huh.
But it was a while. Now, wait a minute, just let me clue you, as they say
Yeah.
right here. It was a while before I learned how to frail.
Sure. I mean, it took some practice.
Yeah. Dad had another little style he did on the banjo too. It was a lot easier than what I just did.
A little two-finger style.
Yeah. David, when I got this banjo, it didn't have these nice fancy tuners on it.
Mm-hmm. You've had that since you were 14?
Yeah. Carried it around New York in the dues paying days when I was playing coffee houses. In that same little old case there.
It's a little cardboard case. You've treated that thing very well. It's an old Kalamazoo banjo. It's a beauty.
Yeah.
Now, where'd you get that one at 14?
My dad and my cousin Virgil Carroll were working on the WPA at the time, and they got to talking about the little homemade banjo. And Dad said, I want to get him a better one sometime, as soon as I can. And Virgil said, I got one I'll sell you. I can't pick for nothing. And he said, I don't know why I ever bought it. I'll sell it to you for $7. He said, that's what I got in it, and that young'un needs it. And Dad said, well, I'll pay you for it as long as I can. He said, just $1 or $2 now and then. Don't pay it all down.
80 cents a day, it took a while.
Boy, I'm glad I got a hold of it. I wish somehow Dad could know I've still got it and how good it sounds.
He was very encouraging to you in playing music. Did he think that you might be a musician?
I think he knew.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think somehow he really knew, because he handed me this thing. The last time I tried to get him to pick me a tune on it, he picked it up and handed it to me and said, oh, you pick me one. Said, I want you to learn to pick it good. Might help you get through the world, son.
I'll be darned. He was right about that. I don't think people realize what a good banjo player you are.
If I'd practice and get off my laziness and practice, I could play the banjo, David. Leave that on there now, Steve. Don't you erase what I just said. Ain't the dirty thing about it, I just told the truth.
When you clawhammer, you don't do any double thumbing. You do all pull-offs, don't you?
No double thumbing at all. Never could quite get the hang of it, or my thumb's lazy or something else. I'll tell you what, really. I got to listening carefully to that and got to trying to figure out how to do that, and couldn't double thumb, and I said, heck, I can do it up there.
Mm-hmm.
Who needs to double thumb?
I do.
Old Georgie Buck is dead. The very last words he said, don't never let your woman have her way, boys. Never let your woman have her way. Oh, me and it's so mine. Never let your woman have her way. I won't tell you why. There's a little bit of that one. Wake up, Darlin Cory. Why do you sleep so sound? Them highway robbers are coming, gonna tear your playhouse down. He played that one some too, David.
That's a great one. That's just so old-timey sounding.
I got the blues to it, though.
Yeah, it does. It really does. Doc, how did the guitar come into your life? The first time you heard one?
I was Riley Puckett on the old records, and then there was on. I think there was recording in the records we had. Listen to this. You remember? Do you know who Gene Austin was?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, there was a recording of Gene singing "Little Blue Heaven" and "Faded Summer Love," and I heard the guitar on that.
The guitar was kind of hard to come by, actually, wasn't it, in those days?
Oh, yeah, this was back when I was a little boy. I didn't know what the thing was on the record, but Lord, it sounded good. and I remember what a wonderful sound music was. And then there was old Vernon Delhart and his strum, you remember him on the old records.
Record the old 97.
Yeah. Lay My Head Beneath the Rose, a bunch of things.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, how my first guitar came along, the records got me interested in the sound. But one of my older brothers, Lenny, had borrowed a guitar from cousin Spencer. He'd ordered one from Montgomery Ward, and an arch top, sweet little guitar. And I was fooling around with it. I was sitting by the fireplace one morning, and Dad was finishing his last cup of coffee before he went to work. And I was messing around with it. I hit a chord or two and messing with it, and Dad didn't realize about chords on the guitar. And he said, "Son, if you'll learn to play me a tune on that thing by the time I get back from work, I'll go to town with you Saturday. We'll take the money out of your piggy bank and I'll finish it up and we'll buy you a little guitar." That suited me just fine because my good old friend Paul Montgomery that I went to school with had showed me a few chords on the guitar, a C and a G and a D and an A, I think. So when he got back, I could play the chords to "When the Roses Bloom in Dixieland," and I could sing a verse or two of it. And he said, "Well, son, I guess I'll have to keep my word, won't I?" So I had a little Stella guitar after that for a while. Traded it to a boy in school. I went to school with. Last year I went to school, and that summer me and my youngest brother pulled a crosscut saw and cut cordwood and sold it. And he ordered him a suit of clothes, and I ordered me a silver tone guitar from Sears Roebuck.
Let's hear a little bit of "Roses Bloom in Dixieland," because that is a great song.
Now, I'm going to pick it the way I'd pick it now if I played it for an audience, or a little sort of. When I sung it back then, I've slipped a wire here. I guess it's all right if I fix it on the tape. When the roses bloom in Dixieland, I'll be coming back to you. When the birds are singing music grand to the sweetest girl I ever knew, I'll be saving up my money to build a little cabin home for two. When the roses bloom in Dixieland, I'll be coming back to you. When I left my honey at the railroad time, I said, "Honey, wait for me. I'm going up north to make some money, you see, then I'll head for old Tennessee. When the roses bloom in Dixieland, I'll be coming back to you."
That's the way you pick it now, but what would it have sounded like when you were just a kid just starting? That would give somebody a heart attack trying to learn the guitar now, thinking that's the way you first played it. What would it have sounded like way back then?
Yeah, I would have done a strum, and I sang it in way up high at C because my voice hadn't changed.
Yeah, right. And you did the Carter family strum.
I'd have done something like this along with the words. I just got a letter from the sunny south, from my girl in Tennessee. She said she loved me like she used to do and was waiting there for me. I have answered back her letter. I'm so far away. When the roses bloom in Dixieland, I'll be going back to stay. That's just about the way I played it.
And your father went and bought you the guitar.
Yep, he went and bought me the guitar.
Was that the first big thing you ever owned?
I reckon it must have been, yeah.
Did you ever let your brothers and sisters play it?
Oh, yeah.
So you kind of shared the instruments
None of them cared anything. Well, my brother David liked to fool with it. And Lenny, and he still kept Cousin Spencer's guitar around. And he and I learned to pick and sing some stuff together along a little later. I believe he finally bought the other guitar from Spencer.
So out of 9 children, you were really the only one that really got into music, huh?
David played the fiddle some, believe it or not, in the old-time tuning, the open tuning, we called it, on the fiddle. And when he went in the Navy, he never did fool with it no more. Doggone him, he could have been a pretty good fiddler, and I know he was a real good singer. But Lynn, after he went in the Army, he didn't fool with the guitar anymore either.
Now, at the time you got the guitar, you were already a pretty decent harmonica player, decent banjo player. What was it about the guitar that made you say, this is my instrument?
Just the guitar itself, there was something about it. It had a few more possibilities in music as an accompanying instrument, you know, for a fellow who wanted to sing. And, well, I just love the guitar for what it is. And as for musical instrument, it was my first love, though it came second. Or maybe third if you want to count the harmonica.
Was Maybelle Carter's Picking the first time you heard somebody play the lead on the bass?
Yes. I don't remember whether the blind lady that came and spent the night with us, she was about 16 or 17 years old at the time. She was my Uncle Wade's daughter Uncle Wade Green's daughter by his first wife. She wasn't really a cousin of mine until he lost his first wife and he married Dad's sister. But anyway, I'm not going to give you a family history there, but I was just thinking about that. Just come to mind. Princess was Uncle Wade's second child by his first wife. He had a son named Sam. Princess was a good singer. She was a blind lady and could play the guitar almost like Maybelle Carter.
Now, how old were you when you saw her?
Oh, when she first came and spent the night with us that time, I must have been, that was before I got my harmonica.
Oh, really? So a little kid.
Yeah, I was little. Wow. But the sound of that guitar and her beautiful voice, she could sing just like Sarah.
Well, how did you go about learning the chords, you know, if you couldn't see somebody play the chords?
You
Did
don't
you
have
just
to
poke
see.
around until you found them?
Paul told me when I learned my first chords, Paul Montgomery he could see just a tiny bit, but he told me where to put my fingers on the first, the C, the G, the D, and the A chord. And man, I love the guitar so good that every time he'd sit down, I'd get him to show them to me over about the 4th time I had them.
Now, this is when you were down at the blind school.
Yeah.
Right. And you went down there when you started school when you were about 10, right?
I was 10 years old, turned 11 shortly after I went there, and they had a kindergarten that was truly a kindergarten. I learned to read and write in 2 weeks.
Well, that's pretty amazing.
But not when you're 10 years old, if you got any mind at all.
yeah.
If you had a number 1A, D-double-A number 1 teacher. She was a blind lady, and she was a godsend to that school, Miss Nora Norris, and she lived near Asheville.
Did they teach you music down there?
Yeah, they did, but I only started to take piano, and they wouldn't let me fool around with nothing but classical music, and I quit. It wasn't compulsory.
But you learned to tune down there,
Oh,
didn't
I
you?
sat in the window and listened to tuning classes for a whole year, the last year I stayed there.
Why didn't you take the class?
I didn't want to.
But you're one of the best tuners I've ever heard.
Well, I had a good ear for it by that time, and I learned the rules just by listening. I was really interested, and it was easier to learn to hear him teach beginners and further along people in tuning. It was easier to learn just to sit and listen. And he explained to them he could see Mr. Cox could see a little bit, and he explained to him what the tuning hammer, it was a wrench, was. Had a little hammer lock on one side and a wrench on the other side. How to fit it over the pins to tune. I got onto that, and I'd seen an auto harp by that time.
Mm-hmm.
And pianos, the pins are a little bigger. Anyway, I don't want to give a lesson in tuning on here, but by listening, I learned even how to string a piano. I never did do it. I never did have to.
Mm-hmm.
I learned a bunch of things.
When did you start learning to use a flat pick then?
I heard Jimmy Rogers play the guitar on the records, and I thought, now he's not done. He can't be doing it with a thumb pick, and he's not strumming with his fingers. We called them a straight pick back then. They weren't called a flat pick.
Mm-hmm. How'd you learn to hold it?
When I ordered my guitar from Sears Roebuck, there came a little book with it showing tablature and how to hold your pick, and it said, this is the way Nick Lucas held his pick. He was a jazz guitar player.
Sure.
And my youngest brother David showed me how to hold my pick. You curve your index finger in, and the pick lays against the side of your index. You hold it against your index finger with your thumb. To play loud, you hold the pick tight. And to play softly, you let your grip a little bit loose on the pick so it flexes just a little bit, not enough to lose it. And I'm going to tell you all a little secret. When my pick is real dry, my fingers are, I take my tongue and moisten the thumb and finger. Put them back on the pick in just a minute. It'll stay right where you
Helps you hold it, huh?
Yes, sir.
Huh.
And that's a little trick I learned accidentally. I just learned it.
What did Jimmy Rogers sound like?
I'm just as blue as I can be since Suzette said goodbye to me. My life is a failure, I see. She won't be my gal no more, no more, no more, no more. But I hate to say farewell to my mammy and my sister Nell. They're sure gonna cry when I tell them I ain't coming home no more, no more. De-yodelay, yodelay, yodelay. That's what he sounded like with the flat pick.
When did you start developing your style of playing?
In my late teens, I really got back interested in the guitar. That's when I began to really work with the flat pick and try to seriously learn all the licks that Jimmy Rogers played. He had some pretty good little syncopated licks, you know, like. When I got those down, I thought I had it made.
Mm-hmm. When did you start working on the fiddle tunes?
Oh, that was on down in the 40s. I began to hear Hank Garland and Grady Martin in Nashville. Hank played the electric guitar, and I guess Grady did part of the time. Played fiddle tunes like Old Joe Clark, you know, and Pretty Little Widow, Sugarfoot Rag, a bunch of those things. And I thought, by ginger, if they can play fiddle tunes on the guitar, I believe I can do it on the flat top. But I fooled around with a few and actually learned a few. But I really didn't develop the flat pick and fiddle tunes till in the 50s. I played the electric guitar. I'll jump ahead for a minute here. I played the electric guitar with a little local dance band, and most of the time they didn't have a fiddler, and I'd have to play the lead on the hoedowns, you know, the breakdown tunes for square dancing on the electric guitar. And boy, that gave me about almost 10 years of good technical practice on the guitar.
Man, I bet that sounded great. Since there was no fiddle in the band and you were really doing the lead.
I had to work at it. I must have drove poor little Rosalie half crazy learning that stuff, most of them at home. I'd have to work hard at it, so I'd have it ready for Saturday night and Friday night, you know.
Was that the main time in your life when you really woodshedded and got really good?
It was, as far as playing fiddle tunes. I learned a bunch about the guitar before then, some of the things about finger picking. But that was a gradual happening too. It didn't happen the first time I heard Merle Travis, or the second or third or the 100th time even. It was something that I kind of learned how to do, but didn't get it done, if you know what I mean.
I know. You knew what it was, but you couldn't do it.
Yeah, I couldn't do it for a good long while. Of course, I played it a lot longer than that now for the square dance.
How long would you have to play?
Oh, if we had old Jerry Wilson, old boy used to be a barber here in Boone, calling, sometimes it went 25 to 30 minutes. A long set. Break your arm.
Now, that's an old fiddle tune. I think you told me one time you heard it off the station in Del Rio, Texas.
Yeah, there was a fiddler, and there's just about every night there'd be a program there where they'd play all kinds of country records from down there. They'd play that Beaumont Rag, and I think it was a Texas fiddler. I don't know who he was, but he could do it pretty well.
And you just picked it up by ear.
Yeah.
It's amazing to me that you're so accurate with your playing. How do you do that with not being able to see the fretboard?
Well, now, music is sound, and you learn the spacing, estimated guesses. After a while, the reflexes automatically know how to do it. You don't really think about it. You just do it. I don't know, David, to the sighted person, it must be kind of confusing to try to figure out how you do that.
Well, there's been a lot of great blind musicians. Do you think being blind has given them some special advantage in some way?
They may have needed to work at it a little more as a vocation. David, I don't think it made them any better, because there are a lot of musicians that can see that are just as good. Mm-hmm. If I could see, I don't really have guitar hands. As far as the left hand, I don't have the span. But if I could see, I would have played music as a hobby. I'm sure I would have done something like carpentry or being an electrician, or if I could have figured worked out the money, I might have been some kind of an engineer in mechanics.
Let's go back and talk about the finger picking, because we mentioned how you got into the flat picking style, especially during those band years. But where did you first hear the finger picking?
Merle Travis came on the radio on WLW in Cincinnati in 39, I believe this is correct. And he was working with Grandpa Jones,
right,
the Delmore Brothers,
right,
and they did a bunch of quartet recordings called the Browns Ferry Four. And old Travis had picked one of them good finger picking tunes every once in a while on there. And boy, I thought, man, there is a guitar picker. Chet said when he first heard him, he says, for a long time, I wondered why everybody that played a guitar didn't throw their straight picks away and play fingerstyle. Here's another way.